Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel, I hope. Everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Angry correctional officer locked Julie Chrisley in cafeteria. Julie Chrisley saw her time behind bars get cut short thanks to a presidential pardon. However, the Chrisley Knows Best star has denied receiving any special treatment during her time in prison. Recently, she shared a haunting incident while in prison, with her family weighing in on the story. Savannah Chrisley recently hosted her parents Todd and Julie on her podcast. Julie Chrisley and her husband Todd were introduced to audiences through the USA Network reality series, Chrisley Knows Best. In 2022, however, the two were convicted of charges including bank fraud and tax evasion. For her part, Julie was originally sentenced to 7 years behind bars, which she was set to serve at the Federal Medical Center in Lexington, Kentucky. However, this past May saw Julie and Todd receive a presidential pardon. Since then, the Chrisley family has opened up about Todd and Julie's time in prison, including calls for reform. Recently, Julie herself recounted a harrowing incident while on her daughter Savannah's Unlocked podcast. During their conversation, Savannah noted her mother called her about the incident at the Lexington Center. She shared, "I will never forget at the very beginning, you called me, and you were all to pieces because that one CO," referring to a correctional officer. Julie noted the officer was a food service worker and has since retired. Savannah then claimed the officer intentionally targeted her mother. An incident was recounted in which Julie was locked in a cafeteria. During the discussion, it was felt that Julie's experiences were harsher than Todd's. In turn, Julie shared, "He was just a miserable human being, he really was." Her husband Todd also claimed Julie was the only one getting locked up like that, adding that he would have filed a complaint. Todd and Julie also noticed that a variety of inmates tried to befriend prison staff. However, they felt, "They are not your friends, that's for sure." Comparing both of her parents' experiences, Savannah felt her mother endured harsher treatment than her father. Todd agreed, sharing, "I think that's the way that it is for women in general." In particular, it was noted that Julie's prison didn't have air conditioning, while Todd was able to get new AC units installed within a week thanks to a complaint. For her part, Julie mused that this could be because the building she was placed in was older than the one Todd was in. However, she also highlighted her center didn't have the option of getting new AC units since they never had them to begin with. The cafeteria of Lexington Federal Medical Center wasn't supposed to be a battleground. But on one particularly tense Thursday afternoon, the clatter of trays and hum of lunchtime chatter gave way to confusion, fear, and an outburst that would leave inmates and staff shaken. At the center of it all, Julie Chrisley, reality TV matriarch turned federal inmate, and a correctional officer whose fuse had burned out long before lunch was served. Julie had been keeping a low profile, blending into the daily routine like any other inmate. Though her face was still recognizable, especially among new inmates who'd once binge-watched Chrisley Knows Best, Julie had come to value her quiet time. She often used her meal breaks to speak with a small circle of women she trusted, mostly older inmates who, like her, were dealing with grief, stress, and long sentences. But this Thursday was different. Tension had been rising between inmates and a certain Officer Renshaw, a notoriously hot-tempered correctional officer with a reputation for erratic discipline and a zero-tolerance policy for what he deemed celebrity entitlement. Julie had already felt the sting of Renshaw's irritation weeks earlier when he loudly called her Princess Primetime during roll call. "This isn't Bravo, Julie," he sneered once. "Nobody cares about your hair routine in here." Julie hadn't responded, trying not to poke the bear. But privately, she'd written a complaint and handed it off to a counselor, knowing that retaliation might come. It came all right. That Thursday, Julie had lingered slightly too long in the cafeteria. She and another inmate were deep in conversation, discussing their children and the grief of missing holidays. The food trays had been cleared, the staff growing impatient. And Renshaw noticed. "You think you're special," he barked from across the room, slamming the metal cafeteria doors shut behind him. "No, sir," she said softly, trying to remain calm. "Then why are you still here when the rest of the unit's been dismissed?" "I was just finishing a conversation." "That's not your job. You don't get to have tea time while others work." Julie stood, gathering her small notepad and commissary cup. "I apologize. I'll return to my unit." But Renshaw wasn't done. With a cruel twist of the key, he spun on his heel and locked the cafeteria doors from the outside. Julie, along with 3 other inmates, stood frozen as the heavy metal doors clanked shut. "You want to sit here? Fine. You'll stay here until count," Renshaw said through the tiny window, smirking as he walked off. The other women exchanged alarmed glances. Julie's heart pounded. The cafeteria, suddenly quiet and eerie, felt like a trap. "Did he really just lock us in?" whispered Marlene, a motherly figure in her late 60s who had befriended Julie. "He's snapped," said another woman, pacing. "We're not supposed to be locked in like this. It's a fire hazard." Julie moved to the door and knocked gently. Then, with increasing force, no response. She tried not to panic, but her thoughts raced. What if there's an emergency? What if Chloe tries to call and thinks something's happened to me? Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. The air grew heavy. One of the fluorescent lights above began flickering. Julie kept her composure, channeling the calm she tried to learn in prison meditation classes. "We're okay," she said to the women. "Let's just sit down and wait. I'm sure someone will realize what's going on soon." But she knew this wasn't an accident. Renshaw had done this on purpose, and he had the key. It wasn't until an officer from another unit came to deliver clean trays that the truth unraveled. When she found the doors locked and no answer on the radio, she called in backup. Within minutes, supervisors stormed the area, shouting and banging until someone retrieved the key from Renshaw, who, at that moment, was pretending to be inspecting pipes in a nearby hallway. When the door finally opened, Julie and the women stepped out calmly, but their eyes told the story. One officer noticed the way Julie's hands trembled slightly. Another quietly ushered her aside. Renshaw was pulled into an administrative office and didn't return to the floor the rest of the day. But the real drama was just beginning. Word of what had happened spread like wildfire among inmates and staff. Rumors swirled that Julie had been specifically targeted, that Renshaw had read her complaint and wanted to teach her a lesson. Some claimed he'd been bragging about putting the rich girl in her place. Julie didn't say much at first, but later that evening, she filed another formal complaint. This time, with backing from the other inmates involved. And this time, it got attention. By the weekend, a representative from the Bureau of Prisons' Office of Internal Affairs had flown in for a preliminary investigation. Julie was interviewed in private. Her fellow inmates gave statements. Staff who had long observed Renshaw's erratic behavior spoke up, anonymously but with conviction. Julie's attorney was notified. So was Savannah. Back home, Savannah Chrisley wasted no time lighting up social media. "This is what my mom is dealing with while serving her time. A grown man locked her in a cafeteria like a dog in a cage. This isn't justice. This is abuse." The post went viral. Hashtags like #JusticeForJulie and #InPrisonAbuse trended for days. As for Julie, she stayed mostly silent, except for a short message passed through her lawyer. "I've learned that even in darkness, we must be the light. I am not broken. I'm not afraid, but no one deserves to be treated like that." Renshaw, for his part, was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And within the prison walls, Julie Chrisley walked a little taller. Not because of fame, but because she had refused to be silenced. Even locked behind cafeteria doors, she had found her voice.